Hey, Sip and Talkers, welcome back. You know who it is? It's Joe. And, of course, I'm with my amazing co-host, Sunny.
Hey, everyone. Back with you for another deep dive. And this time, we're getting into some really interesting stuff.
But before we get all philosophical, you guys know, I got to share a quick story, a little mishap I had.
Oh, what'd you do now?
Okay, picture this. I'm at the gym, feeling great, just crushed my workout. And I head to the locker room, grab my stuff, and I'm out the door. Only to realize I left my keys in the locker.
Oh, no. Did you at least remember your clothes this time?
Uh-huh. Very funny. Yeah, clothes were on, but that didn't help much because the locker room was completely deserted. Like, not a soul in sight.
Oh, no. What'd you do?
I basically spent the next hour looking like a lost puppy, wandering around the gym in my sweaty clothes, trying to find anyone who could help me break into my own locker.
I bet they thought you were trying to steal something.
Right. Total nightmare. But hey, at least it's a good story, right? Speaking of stories, what's new with you?
Well, I finally finished that documentary I was telling you about. You know, the one about social experiments?
Oh, yeah. The one where they put people in crazy situations and see how they react?
Yeah. It was wild. Really makes you think about how much our behavior is shaped by the environment and the people around us.
It's like we're all just puppets, right?
Maybe not puppets, but definitely influenced.
Well, speaking of influence, it's kind of perfect timing because we got this really thought-provoking letter from one of our awesome listeners, Micky.
Micky. He's been with us forever.
Right, since the early days. Anyway, he recently watched this manga called The Human Cattle, and it really messed with his head.
I've heard of that one. Pretty intense stuff, right?
Intense is putting it mildly. Imagine you're living your life, thinking you're in control, making your own choices. And then, bam, you find out you're actually cattle being bred by this more advanced species for, well, you know, not so pleasant purposes.
Yeah, I get why that would freak someone out.
Totally. And it got Micky thinking, are we also living in a system that's shaping our beliefs and values without us even realizing it?
That's a big question and a little bit scary, to be honest.
Yeah, but it's a question worth exploring. Right? I mean, think about it. We're all born into these structures, families, societies, with their own sets of rules and expectations.
It's like we're all playing this giant game, but we didn't get to make the rules.
Exactly. And Micky's question is basically, are we just pawns in this game? Are we all just cattle?
Okay, whoa, hold on. Maybe not cattle, but there's definitely something to unpack here. How much control do we really have over our lives?
Right. So that's what we're going to be diving into today. Are we truly free agents, making our own choices? Or are we just products of the systems we live in?
To break this down, we've come up with 5 key areas where the system might be at play. Social structures, media influence, political power, technological control, and personal awareness.
And we're going to explore each of these areas, looking at the arguments for and against the idea that we're all just cogs in a giant machine.
Right, and we'll use real-world examples to make things a bit more concrete. So let's start with social structures. How do they shape our beliefs?
It's like from the moment we're born, we're slotted into these systems. Family, education, religion, cultural norms. It's a lot.
And they all come with these built-in rules and expectations, like an instruction manual for life, but no one tells you where it came from.
It's true. Like, we're taught to value certain things, success, achievement, competition, fitting in, without even questioning why.
Exactly. We internalize those values, make them our own, even if they don't really serve us.
Okay, yeah, I'm seeing the cattle analogy now. Like, we're all being herded in a certain direction without really questioning where we're going or why.
But it's not all doom and gloom, right? We still have some free will, right?
Of course. We can make choices, question things, even rebel against the system sometimes.
Totally. It's not like we're robots or anything. We can think for ourselves.
And there are tons of examples of people doing just that, pushing back against the system. Well, like that whole anti-ractopamine pork movement in Taiwan back in 2021. People were furious about the government's decision to import that pork from the U.S.
Oh, yeah, I remember that. They were worried about the health risks, right?
Exactly. They took to the streets, protested, signed petitions, and they actually got the government to reconsider. That's pretty powerful.
That's a great example of people saying, no, we're not okay with this, and making your voices heard. And it worked.
Exactly. It shows we're not just helpless cattle being led to the slaughterhouse. We can stand up for ourselves, for our beliefs.
So true. But even if we have the power to resist, it's still important to be aware of the forces that are trying to shape us.
Like the media. They're constantly trying to tell us what to think.
The media is a huge one. I mean, we're bombarded with information from all sides these days. TV, social media, websites, podcasts. It's a lot to sift through.
And it's not always objective, right? There's always an angle, a spin, an agenda.
Exactly. A lot of the information we get is filtered through someone else's lens, whether it's a corporate agenda, a political bias, or just the opinions of whoever is creating the content.
So you're saying maybe we're not getting the full picture? Maybe the media is shaping our perception of the world without us even realizing it.
It's a real possibility, and that's why it's so important to be a critical consumer of information. Don't just accept everything you read or hear at face value.
Easy to say, but how do you do that?
Well, for one thing, you can diversify your sources of information. Don't just rely on one or two news outlets or social media platforms.
Makes sense to get different perspectives.
Exactly. Seek out different viewpoints, even ones you might disagree with. It'll give you a more well-rounded understanding of the issues.
It's like that old saying, there are two sides to every story, or maybe even 3 or 4.
Absolutely. And another thing you can do is work on your critical thinking skills. Learn to question assumptions, spot logical fallacies, and evaluate evidence. You got to be able to think for yourself, not just blindly believe what you're told.
So you're saying we need to be like detectives, always on the lookout for clues and piecing together the truth.
Exactly. And speaking of truth, that brings us to our next area, political power. Because governments have a huge impact on the systems we're talking about.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I mean, they make the laws, set policies, control a lot of the narrative. It's like they're designing the board we're all playing on, right?
Exactly. And they've got this interest in keeping things running smoothly, maintaining the status quo, even if it means, limiting some freedoms or shutting down people who disagree.
So are you saying they're kind of manipulating people? Making them think and act in certain ways that benefit, the people in charge?
It's definitely a possibility. I mean, we see it throughout history, right?
Yeah.
Think about all the propaganda during wars or how authoritarian regimes censor stuff.
That's true. Like in China, they have the Great Firewall blocking tons of websites and social media. It's almost like they're trying to control what people see and hear so they can control what they think.
That's exactly it. And that kind of control, it can really mess with people's values and beliefs. When you're only exposed to one side of the story, it's easy to think that's the whole truth.
It's like being trapped in an echo chamber. Everyone's saying the same thing, and you start to believe it, even if it's, maybe not totally true.
That's a great way to put it. And that's why it's so important to break out of those echo chambers, find diverse perspectives, question the narratives you're given.
Yeah, makes sense. But how do you do that when the government controls so much? The media, education, even the internet.
It's tough, no doubt. But it's not impossible. Remember the Hong Kong protests back in 2019?
When they were protesting against the Chinese government. Yeah. Those were huge.
Hundreds of thousands of people in the streets demanding more democracy, more autonomy. They were literally risking their lives to stand up for what they believe in.
It was inspiring to see so many people fighting for their freedom.
Exactly. And it shows that even when you're up against this massive power, people can still resist, make their voices heard, try to change things.
So what you're saying is political power isn't absolute. That even in systems that seem really restrictive, people still have some agency.
Absolutely. Humans are incredibly resilient, creative. We're always finding ways to bend the rules, to create our own spaces for freedom.
If there's a will, there's a way.
Right. And speaking of finding ways around the rules, that leads us right into our next topic, technological control.
Ooh, this is where things get really interesting. Technology's everywhere. It's changing so fast.
It really is. And the thing about technology is it can be used for good or for bad. It can be a tool for connecting people, for sharing knowledge and all that. But it can also be used for surveillance, for manipulation, for controlling people.
This is a double-edged sword, right? All this amazing tech that can make our lives better, but it also has the potential to, invade our privacy, limit our freedom, even mess with our sense of self.
You got it. And it's often happening in ways we don't even realize. Think about those algorithms that decide what we see on social media, or all that data being collected about what we do online.
Like the other day, I was online looking for running shoes, and then suddenly I'm seeing ads for running shoes everywhere I go. It's like they're reading my mind.
Oh, yeah. I hate when that happens. And that's just the beginning. These algorithms are getting more and more complex. They can target us with personalized ads, filter the information we see, even try to predict what we'll do next.
It's kind of freaky when you stop and think about it. Like, are we really in control of our choices, or are we being subtly manipulated by all this technology?
That is the question, and it's one we all need to be asking as technology becomes more and more a part of our lives.
So what can we do about it? How do we protect ourselves from all this?
Well, a good first step is to be more aware of how your data is being collected and used. Read those privacy policies. I know they're boring, but they actually tell you what's going on.
Okay, read the privacy policies, but they're so long and confusing, I usually just click agree without even looking.
I get it. It's tempting to just go with the flow, but taking the time to understand how your information is being used is so important. You can adjust your settings and make informed choices about what you're comfortable sharing.
Okay, I'll try to be more mindful of that. What else?
Another thing you can do is support those organizations that are fighting for digital rights and privacy. There are lots of great groups out there working to hold these big tech companies accountable.
Right, like putting your money where your mouth is, supporting businesses and organizations that share your values.
Exactly. And at the end of the day, it comes down to making conscious choices about how we use technology. We can use it wisely and intentionally instead of letting it control us.
I like that. So it's not about rejecting technology altogether, but being more mindful and intentional about how we use it.
Exactly. And that whole idea of being mindful and making conscious choices, well, that brings us to our final area, personal awareness.
All right, let's get personal. What's personal awareness got to do with all this talk about systems and control?
Well, think about it this way. The most important system we need to be aware of is the one inside our own heads. Our thoughts, our beliefs, our values, those are the things that shape how we experience reality.
So you're saying even if we're surrounded by all these forces trying to influence us, we still have the power to choose how we react to them.
That's exactly it. We can question those influences, we can challenge them, we can even reject the narratives that don't resonate with us. We can choose to think critically, seek out different perspectives, and form our own opinions based on evidence.
Sounds great, but isn't that hard work?
Mm-hmm.
It's so much easier to just go with the flow, accept what we're told.
Oh, for sure it's easier. But is it better? If we're not willing to question our beliefs, our assumptions, then we're giving up our power to really shape our own lives.
So you're saying personal awareness is the key to breaking free, to becoming those independent thinkers we were talking about.
Exactly. It's about recognizing the biases that shape our perceptions, understanding how our own minds work, and making conscious choices about what we believe and how we act.
Deep stuff. So after all this talk about systems, control, manipulation, technology, what's the bottom line? What's the takeaway for our listeners?
I think it comes down to this. We're not just helpless pawns in some big game. We have choices. We have the power to shape our own destinies. But to really tap into that power, we need to be aware of these systems, be critical thinkers, and be willing to challenge the narratives we're given.
I love that. It's like we're all playing this giant game of cosmic chess, but we don't have to be stuck as pawns. We can learn the rules, get better at playing, and start making our own moves.
And that's what makes life exciting, right? It's this constant journey of learning, growing, figuring things out.
This has been such a mind-bending conversation. I'm definitely ready for a refill after all this deep thinking. What about you?
I could use a top-up, too. And hey, maybe we can continue this in part 3 of our deep dive into this whole "are we just cattle?" question.
Sounds like a plan. We'll be right back, so stick with us, Sip and Talkers. Okay, Sip and Talkers, we are back. Ready to finish off this deep dive. This whole "are we just cattle?" thing has really gotten me thinking.
It's a pretty heavy question, right? Gets you wondering how much control we really have.
Right. We talked about all these different systems that shape our lives, social structures, media, politics, technology. It can feel kind of overwhelming, like we're stuck in this web we can't escape.
It is a lot to process, for sure.
It's like that scene in The Matrix when Neo realizes the whole world is a simulation.
Oh, I see what you mean. Yeah, it's like a giant wake-up call, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
But even in The Matrix, Neo fights back. He chooses to believe in something more.
And that's what we've been talking about, right? We're not just passive recipients. We have a choice, a say in how we respond to all these influences, how we shape our own beliefs.
It's like we have these hidden superpowers, but we need to learn how to use them.
I like that analogy. So what are some of those superpowers?
Well, we can be critical thinkers, we can question the narratives, we can even choose to get our information from different sources.
All good ones. And we can connect with other people who share our values, who are also working to make things better. We don't have to do it alone.
Like that anti-ractopamine pork movement in Taiwan. It was successful because people joined together, made their voices heard.
That's a great example of collective power.
It reminds me of that Margaret Mead quote. Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has.
That is a great quote. We're not powerless. We can make a difference if we work together.
So what's the step one? What can our listeners do right now to start taking back control, flexing their freedom muscles?
Awareness is key. Pay attention to all those messages coming at you every day. Where are they coming from? What's the agenda? Are they trying to manipulate you?
So be more mindful of what we're reading, watching, listening to.
Exactly. And then start questioning those messages. Don't just take them at face value. Do your own research, find different perspectives, talk to people who disagree with you.
Like being a detective, gathering all the evidence before making up your mind.
I like that. And remember, it's okay to change your mind. The more you learn, the more your beliefs might change. And that's a good thing. It means you're growing.
It's like we're all on this never-ending quest to understand the world, and ourselves too.
Totally. And the more we learn, the more empowered we become to make those conscious choices about how we want to live, the values we want to prioritize, the world we want to create.
Man, this whole conversation has been so inspiring. I'm not feeling like a helpless cow anymore. I'm feeling like a trailblazer ready to forge my own path.
That's the spirit.
Now, if you're looking for even more inspiration, more deep dives into life's big questions, I highly recommend checking out our friend Micky's YouTube channel, Mickyytolife.
Oh yeah, Micky, the manga fan who got us thinking about all of this in the first place. He's got this amazing channel where he travels all over, explores different cultures, and shares his thoughts on everything like philosophy, food, and of course, whiskey.
He's a great follow if you like to think deeply, laugh a lot, and enjoy a good drink. We'll put a link in the show notes so you can check it out.
Definitely do that. And with that, we're going to wrap up this episode of Sip and Talk. Thanks for joining us on this crazy journey through the systems and influences that shape our lives.
Until next time, Sip and Talkers, stay curious, stay engaged, and keep those minds open.
And as always, stay thirsty.
Cheers to that.